rather clandestine and murky environment that we've heard is also used for criminal practices, but they won't be going there. But what it does, Catherine, is that it routes messages through a random series of servers. It's almost like peeling an onion. In fact, Tor stands for the onion, and it works in a way that not only encrypts the messages, but more importantly, perhaps, also encrypts the metadata, the information about the sender and the recipient. So very, very difficult to crack. I think that the Five Eyes network may have ways and means of getting some of the material that's on that network, but by and large, it's a pretty secure way of getting in touch with a high expectation that your confidentiality will be maintained. It's used, for example, by the New York Times. Now, the New York Times has a whole series of approaches that you can use. They've got secure drop. They've also got two that just encrypt the material, but not the metadata. And strangely enough, they also say there's always snail mail, but don't do it at a post office. Put it in a pillar box. But I think that this is going to prove advantageous for the Stuffed Circuit team, because they've already, I gather this morning, started to receive information through the secure network. So it has the ability of allowing them to be the recipients of material that maybe they weren't likely to get before because people were too worried that they were going to be found out. So the Tor network has its uses. Whistleblowing accounts for about 5% of the traffic on the Tor network. 15% of it is drug dealing.
Look, also, I mean, many media organisations have been offering encrypted services one way or another for a long time. What was so interesting about this, I found, was them publicly touting it. It was on its, they were advertising it on the webpage and saying, "Here, use this."
I think it will be prominently on their website in future. New York Times has it permanently on their homepage. If you want to send us confidential information, click here. So they're not the first to do it, and I think that they're following an established lead that will, I think, provide a valuable outlet for people who up to now have been really worried about blowing the whistle.
Well, we've learned so much more too since the Snowden era, not only of the possibility, the technical possibility of state surveillance, but so many people are worried about their corporate situation as well. Your corporate employer owns your emails and your other communications.
Not under this system. They, in fact, the sender is so well protected by secure drop that I think that commercial oversight is probably the easiest one for them to circumvent. So I think a good move by them. And as I say, it's already started to get traffic. Of course, yesterday they had another Stuffed Circuit story that has caused some ructions. This was the activist Hamid Sudan talking about New Zealand operations in Iraq. And it's interesting that yesterday Jacinda Ardern seemed to have confirmed at least some of what was in his report and carried on Stuffed Circuit yesterday.
And the question then becomes, and this is the thing with an incoming government, what you do about, really? Did we get any indication of that?
Well, that's right. It was interesting. There was a little bit of plausible deniability in Jacinda Ardern's statement, where she said that she wasn't perhaps privy to as much information as the previous government was on the matter. So she's given herself an out if it's proven that she wasn't quite accurate. But I think that it does highlight the need for this continued surveillance of what our military are up to. We've had numerous stories now from Iraq, from Afghanistan, of activities that the public knew nothing about, and I think it's doing a good job just to hold them to account in terms of a degree of transparency that doesn't jeopardise security.
At the other end of the current affairs spectrum, we have 7 o'clock television and 7 sharp. Yeah. How do you see the new pair settling in there?
Well, I thought the first episode of Seven Sharp was awful. They had a long time to come up with a couple of blockbusters that they had in the can ready to go, but I thought it was awkward, and the cake baking was silly. I think after that, in the time since then, it's a little less awkward. They've done some useful field stories. The swapping life jacket story that they ran was a very good one. And the sale of the drop it auction site, I thought, was another good story. But I don't think that Jeremy Wells, who is really exceptionally good at what he does, deadpan, understated humour, but I don't think he's found his comfort zone here yet. And to be honest, Catherine, I'm not sure that in this format he will. I think asking a comedian to be a journalist, and at times to be a serious journalist, I think is a big ask, and one that is a little bit wrong-headed. I think it's better to have real journalists or established journalists doing the work of journalists. And I ask myself the question here, do we really need two presenters? Hilary Barry is an absolute pro, and I'm not detracting from Jeremy Wells. I think he's very good at what he does. He's very intelligent. But, we've got an established, comfortable broadcaster here in Hilary Barry, intelligent, she's professional, she's versatile. Why don't we just have a solo act? Why do we have to always have two presenters in these roles? And I think that if we just had Hilary Barry there, we might be able to see Seven Sharp come back a little from the infotainment or tain info. In other words, the entertainment supersedes the information. If we just had her on her own, I think we might see the development of a very worthwhile, if light touch, current affairs.
Okay, I suppose
program.
That's their fundamental decision. Still just waiting, listeners. We are standing by to take a live feed from the Parliament where Bill English is. Just stay with us, please, Gavin. Where Bill English is expected to... he's holding a media conference shortly. There is rampant speculation. He'll be announcing that he's standing down. We're going to bring that to you live and live stream it also on the webpage, but we are still awaiting and could be for a few minutes yet just for all this to unfold. On the question of Seven Sharp, though, Gavin, it's deciding what it's going to be, isn't it? And they had the project which brought a whole concept across from Australia and which has settled into what it is. And I suppose on TV1 it's a question of deciding, especially with Jeremy Wells being such a competent satirist, do we...
Hi. Awesome, thank you so much. Just go straight. Just go straight after Yes. Okay, put it back on.
Ladies and gentlemen, last week the National Party caucus had a very successful meeting in Tauranga, planning its strategy through to 2020. Over the summer I've been reflecting on what part I would play in that strategy. After careful consideration and talking things over with my family, I've decided that now is the right time for me to step aside and from the leadership of the National Party and embark on new personal and professional challenges. Therefore, I've informed the National Caucus this morning that I'm resigning as leader of the National Party and will leave Parliament. My resignation will take effect on Tuesday, February the 27th, and I intend to deliver a valedictory speech on Thursday, the 1st of March. I believe this will give National's new leader the time and the best possible opportunity to prepare the party for the 2020 election. It's been a huge privilege to lead the party and to serve in politics since I was first elected to Parliament just over 27 years ago. I'm proud of the innovative work that I was involved with as a health minister in the 1990s and later as an education spokesman in opposition, finance minister through the GFC, and working alongside New Zealanders in the last term of government to stabilise and grow the economy and to rebuild Christchurch. In recent years, I've also enjoyed particularly developing the social investment approach to help New Zealand's most innovative, most vulnerable citizens, and finding new ways for the Crown to work with Māori to make a real difference. And of course, last year I was honoured and privileged to lead New Zealand as Prime Minister in an energised and cohesive third-term government. None of this would have been possible without the support of many people inside and outside of Parliament, and I want to thank those many people who voted for us in the 2017 election with the result that we are now a large, strong opposition in the Parliament, and particularly for the broad public support since the change of government. I've also been able to serve with many outstanding politicians, and I want to thank my parliamentary colleagues past and present. I also want to thank the National Party for the trust and support that they have given me. I've been fortunate to be able to come to work every day with a sense of mission, but also to work with a team of people who shared that sense of mission. I want to acknowledge the people and communities of my old electorate through the Southland and before that Wallace, who sent me to Parliament and still keep me grounded many years later. To our supporters, thank you for keeping the faith through 9 years of successful government and of course through that change in government. It's been an absolute pleasure to lead a party that represented you and your values and your ambitions for New Zealand. Most importantly, I want to thank my family, Mary and her children, Luke, Thomas, Maria, Rory, Bart and Xavier, and we just brought the tallest ones along today. Through all our time together as a family, we have lived with the demands of public service. Your strength and tolerance has enabled my career. I now look forward to our new life together. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Does this mean, Mr. English, that you believe that you couldn't beat Jacinda Ardern?
No, it doesn't. This has been a purely personal decision. Clearly I wouldn't be standing down if we were in government and I was Prime Minister, but I'm satisfied that I would have the support of my caucus through 2020 if they could see I was determined to do that, and I believe we certainly could be competitive in 2020 because this is a structurally weak government, even if the Prime Minister is popular, and I'm satisfied that we're handing over the party in as strong a position as it could be, not being in government. But more importantly than that partly as a result of the stewardship that we were in government, the economy is in good shape, and there's no reason why that shouldn't remain the case. The government's books are in good shape. So, an election in 2020 will be about the choice of the big opportunities New Zealand has that many other countries don't have.
What does this mean for Paul Bennett's job? What does this mean for Paul Bennett's job? Is she going to step into your shoes in the interim? Is she standing down as deputy?
Oh, look, I'll remain the leader until the 27th, by which time I'd imagine the caucus will have sorted out who's leader, deputy leader, whatever.
Do you have a preferred successor?
What's that?
Do you have a preferred successor?
No, I don't.
What's the process now for a new leader?
Well, I've just set a date for when I will step aside, and so the caucus will now begin the process of electing a new leader. In our process, it's the MPs alone who do that. But I'm sure over the next couple of weeks there'll be discussion with party members and supporters who have a view about it.
How long have you been thinking about standing down? How long has it taken?
Oh, really just crystallised over the summer period, and I spent quite a lot of time, for the first time in a long time actually, with no real political concerns, no need to get ready for the next cabinet, and time together with the family, and that's what I mean about being a personal decision. This is more about myself and my family having spent most of my adult life, all of their lives, with the demands of politics, and I want the opportunity to be able to start again on a different life, and for our family to be able to live without politics.
Had you spoken with anyone else in the party about your decision for today?
Oh yes, I'd informed some of my senior and long time colleagues.
How long ago?
I spoke to I can't remember exactly the day, but Paula Bennett and Stephen Joyce probably a week ago, and I've been talking to my family about it for some time.
Did you have any discussion on the caucus about how the logistics of the leadership contest will work out now in terms of your resignation date and how that might happen and how might that look?
Well, not a lot of discussion. I've simply signalled that it's going to happen, and I imagine over the coming days if there's discussion needed. But look, it's a pretty straightforward process. This is a caucus who did me an enormous favour by executing a very civil and successful transition when John Key unexpectedly left, and quite capable, in my view, of doing that again in a way that gives a new leader and a new team a great start.
So you expect the new person to be, will you expect the new leadership team to be in place by ready to take over on the day of your resignation takes effect?
Yes. Yep, that's my expectation.
You spent 2 days planning and you spent 2 days planning and strategizing in Tauranga last week. Did you give the caucus any indication that you were planning on moving along?
No.
Why not?
Well, because it would have been a major distraction from the real business, which is the party reviewing the election and then focusing on how it's going to conduct itself over the next 2 or 3 years. An incoming leader, an opposition, always has the opportunity to change what it was, but I must say it was a very successful.
Ms. Ringwitz, do you think the leadership of the National Party would best be served by parliamentary experience or generational change?
Well, I'm not going to express a view about it. Look, I'll just have a vote like everyone else in the process, and I expect I might enjoy them coming to ask me for it. After years of having to go and ask other people for their votes.
Do you think that some of the other long-serving MPs that you've worked some of the long-serving MPs that you've worked alongside with for many years now, do you think that they should take their cue from you and perhaps move on?
No, not necessarily at all. A caucus needs a balance of people who have fresh ideas and energy, but also people who know the big picture and can see the longer term. It's a real danger in politics of getting too much drawn into the day-to-day. And I happen to think the caucus has a very good balance of that kind of experience, and I would hope that people who have the experience know that it's valuable.
Was there one clear moment where you decided that you'd had enough, and what prompted it?
I was probably sitting on the couch looking out the window and dipped in the peaceful environment and thinking, wouldn't it be great if I didn't have to answer media questions?
What's been the highlight of your 27 years here? What's been the highlight of your 27 years here?
Oh, serving as Prime Minister is certainly the highlight, no doubt about that. Despite the fact that we lost government in the 2017 campaign, was just had so much intensity and public interest, and for us it was a great, fantastic family experience. But look, there's been any number. My view about what you do in politics is that you need to be satisfied yourself about what you do, and there's any number of things I'm very satisfied about over time. Some of which will be of public interest, some of which matter a lot, but aren't that much political.
John, any regrets over?
Regrets?
Oh no, not particularly. I mean, there's certainly been some ups and downs. Probably in my career more than most. But I don't regret that. That's what makes you a better politician. I'm a bit of a slower learner than some people. And over time I've got better at it.
Well, John Key endorsed you when he resigned as leader. Is there any particular reason that you've chosen not to endorse a successor?
Well, because I just think it's the role of the caucus to choose one. In our case, it was when I was there. I was Deputy Prime Minister. I've been with John a long time, so it's probably what was going to happen anyway. But so I'm not endorsing anybody.
Do you
Have
job
spoken to
to
him? Do you know where you're going to go to from here? Anything you want to do?
Well, as I said, I like outside politics, personal and business opportunities. I'd like to be able to work with my family. We have a lot of interests in common, Mary and children, and I'm pretty open to all those opportunities.
Are you interested in going back to farming at all, or into the agricultural industry?
Into the
Agricultural industry.
Well, I'm certainly going to be spending some time back in Dublin. Whether they would regard my skills as useful or relevant is another question altogether.
Would you be interested in an international role?
Well, look, somebody haven't looked into that at all. And I'm not going to prejudge any of those things. We've got a process to get through over the next couple of weeks. I think any politician leaving knows of the day that you're out of the building and you need to make your own way. It's a day I'm looking forward to.
Just a bit further to Andrew's question. What have you achieved in government that you're most satisfied about? And is there anything that you regret not achieving?
Well, look, you can always have done more, no doubt about that. But I'm pleased that pretty much every day I came into this building, I had a sense about achieving things and got on with it. But I think the fairly obvious ones are the ones I've mentioned. That the whole helping manage the New Zealand economy through the GFC. I think getting New Zealand into a position where now with a growing economy, well-organised government, there's the opportunity to make choices a whole lot of other countries just can't make over the next 5 to 10 years. I was also a minister in the late 90s and very much enjoyed the role as the Minister of Health through a pretty challenging set of health reforms. And actually the other bit I really enjoyed was being the education spokesman in opposition from 2003 to about 2006. Probably the best bit though has just been the ability to work in a team of people who have been so functional and cohesive. As I explain to my team quite often, this is not normal in politics. What the National Party has had in the last 10 or 15 years has been really something quite special, and they need to keep that together because it's a key part of their success.
Labour tore itself apart. Over the last decade, Labour tore itself apart over various leadership struggles. Why are you so confident that National won't fall into that trap?
Because I think they know it doesn't work. That's a recipe for staying in opposition regardless of the quality of government. This happens to be a government that's going to find it hard to maintain momentum, and so there's a real incentive there that to be competitive. The caucus makes a leadership change that works and backs them through to the 2020 election.
Mr. English, how does it feel having been there with you?
Oh, really good. We had a good chat last night. We've had many over recent months, so they're surprisingly normal. Lived their whole life under the spotlight of politics, and sometimes. And I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to be able to spend more time on their interests, supporting Mary and her business. I want to make sure I've got the time to do that.
Do you think any of them
you did miss out on some of the kids growing up?
Oh, look, we made personal arrangements, some of which ended up being a bit controversial, about to ensure that we had something like a normal family life. So just by way of trivia, I haven't eaten in Bellamy since 1996 because I always went home for dinner. And I was pleased to be able to have my family in Wellington, even though I represented the South, so that I was able to function as playing a normal part of the household and get to the sports games and parent-teacher interviews.
If any of your children said they were, if any of your children said they were looking at going into politics, would you encourage them or dissuade?
I'd say it'd be much more powerful to be a journalist.
What do you think your legacy would be? What if you wanted to be the English legacy? What would it be?
Look, I'm not a great believer in legacies. You have to be satisfied yourself with what you do and with the impact that on people of your actions and politics on the people in the country that you care about. I think what is part of what I think has been achieved is pretty obvious, and that is that we've had a well-managed economy. It's really important that they keep managing it well because it's not, otherwise it would deteriorate. I hope that as has been discussed a bit lately, that the government picks up the concepts of social investment, not because of my legacy, because actually a lot of people have worked on it, including my deputy Paul Bennett, but because it could make a profound difference to the lives of many people. Yesterday I visited a partnership school in Maungarii and Disability Trust in the middle of Auckland, people whose lives really do need to be changed. And this is a toolkit that can change it. I think one of the, this isn't so much my personal thing, but certainly part of it, and that is the rebuilding of Christchurch, much as there was some discussion in the election about whether it had gone fast enough, but actually working alongside Jerry Brownlee, that was a major achievement by any government on a large scale, very complex, and there's thousands of people benefiting from that.
Do you think a change of leadership will make it easier for National to do a coalition deal with New Zealand First or others at the next election?
Look, I wouldn't want to prejudge that. There's going to be an awful lot of water under the bridge between now and the next election, which the change in leadership in National is just one of the early events. This is a government that's going to come under some real pressure because of its makeup and the way it was formed. And how they react to that will have a big influence on what the options are of 2020. But I don't think you can prejudge that now.
How has politics changed in the 27 years you've been in Parliament?
How's it changed? That's a very good question. It's changed in a couple of ways. One is just the speed of the news cycle. The other is that you're no longer prisoner to the whims and preferences of newspaper editors because there's now so many ways of communicating with the public. I think there's also a higher expectation around discipline and cohesion than there used to be. If I think of the National Party caucus that I first joined in 1990, which included Sir Rob Muldoon and 36 new members of Parliament, of which there's now will only be one left in 2 weeks, and that's next month. It was a much more unpredictable, rambunctious environment, one in which current leader of New Zealand First thrived. That would be fatal to a government today. People now expect cohesion and unity. But look, a lot of the issues haven't changed, and one of the things you notice after being in politics a long time is some of the same ideas, some of the same old bad ideas just keep coming back. You can never quite kill them.
What's your message to caucuses they run into a leadership panel?
Just that the way they go about it will make a big difference to how the public perceive the confidence of the opposition and the National Party. And that is if they go about it in the same way they did with my transition into leadership. There's a quite robust discussion, but an internal process that's respectful and civil, then that'll give the new leader a great start.
You mentioned Nick Smith. Can I ask, is this the end of the Rat Pack era? Are you going to stick around?
Well, it's not really a pack anymore, is it?
Today's still that. Mr. English, what happens for the next 2 weeks? Are you going to be out there every day attacking the government, or are you standing back and letting others in the party take that?
Oh, look, I've got a number of obligations and expectations to meet that's in my diary, which I'll continue with unless I get a call, unless my office has had a call by now cancelling them, which is quite possible. Otherwise, I'll just continue the normal business of leader of the opposition.
Just to follow on from
just a couple more questions.
Just to follow on from Andrew's question, what should we make of the MPs who are here with and those who aren't? Do you think this is going to end up with a wider changing of the guard, so to speak?
Look, that's all a matter for the caucus. I can't even tell you exactly who's standing behind me. So I heard Nick speaking. So I wouldn't make anything of that. In fact, because of weather, a number of MPs weren't able to get to caucus today.
Does that include Simon Bridges?
Yeah, apparently he's caught up in Tauranga.
You mentioned that there were some achievements that you felt were not in the public eye. Can you give us an example of one where you think, wow, I made a difference there?
Well, fortunately you're a student of these things, Bernard, but the way that the New Zealand government now runs its own balance sheet of assets and liabilities is best in the world. Well, it was up until 3 or 4 months ago. And I hope they keep it that way. That has huge ongoing benefits for the budget, but also for the country. Just to have well-run infrastructure, assets that the government understands, the condition of its schools, condition of its houses, the management of the risks, to value and to service ability across those assets. We spent a number of years as a finance minister driving that, and it's not something that's obvious, but matters an awful lot. Well, except to the people saying the schools are the benefit of the $5 billion catch-up investment program. Also the focus on data, the use of data in government. I've talked about that publicly before. I don't need to go on at length about it, but if you really want to focus on people, then you need to know a bit about them in an appropriate way. And up until a few months ago, we had real momentum around that. I'm not sure what the new government's going to do with the toolkit.
Ms. Greenwood, you had built quite a respectable relationship amongst our Kiwi group. What do you say to them, like Naitahu, etc., within the business sector? What do you say to them?
Well, not just Naitahu, but I've got to know very well, actually, the leadership of most of the iwi, and certainly the ones that have interacted with the Crown. What I'd say to them is don't let the basic instincts of the Labour Party halt the process. The basic instincts of the Labour Party is to try and control Māori institutions. Iwi have momentum of their own, resources of their own. They have cohesion of their own, where they don't need government in order to make progress. And the early signs are the Labour Party's going down the same old track that they did before. So I hope they ignore it, work with the government where they have to, but get on with the job and drag the government along.
Do you think that your replacement will be able to maintain those relationships with Iwi moving forward?
Well, I think it's important they do. A number of parts of the country, they are one of the biggest organisations. Right up the east coast of the North Island, for instance, we are among the larger investors and eventually will be among the larger employers. So it's well worth it. But it takes time to build the personal relationships.
Do you think the next family how they're feeling today? Can we just ask your family how they're feeling today? How are you feeling?
Oh, fine.
Have you had your husband yet?
Oh, he was there.
Will you be returning to the deep side?
Certainly not immediately, but I'll be getting down there more often.
Do you think the next leader of the National Party is behind you now?
I have no idea. It's a bit early. Okay, thank you very much.
Do you want to say anything?
Oh, look, just on behalf of caucus, we just want to say that in some ways, of course, today is tinged with sadness. Bill is a man that has incredible mana, incredible respect amongst all of us caucus members.
he has led us so incredibly well and done such a great job with us. So we're going to miss him and miss him a lot. And I just don't think New Zealand will ever fully appreciate just the depth of his thinking, everything that he's given to them. We're just so proud to have him as our leader and as a Prime Minister.
Well, you said last week that you didn't want the job for the leadership.
Thank you.
The party for the 2020 election. It's been a huge privilege to lead the party and to serve in politics since I was first elected to Parliament just over 27 years ago.
Mr English thanked those who had supported him and the party at last year's election and paid tribute to his family.